I want to talk to your authentic self that is quietly waiting inside you. Something profound, something unshakable, the part of you that is not designed for approval, not molded by expectation, not performing to be seen or liked, but the part of you that simply is. You've probably caught glimpses of this self, maybe in the mirror, in your reflection after a quiet moment, or in fleeting sparks of joy. But I want you to consider this. The reflection you see every day isn't exactly who you are. It's a reversed, distorted image shaped by habit, perception, and the assumptions of others. Welcome and thank you for joining me in this 25-part series on emotional intelligence and critical thinking. Across these conversations, we will explore how these two forces, awareness of self and mind, and the ability to question, analyze, and understand, guide us toward living authentically. Together, they are the tools that help us notice when we are drifting into habit, fear, or external expectation, and how to step back into the truth of who we really are. There's an experiment I love to think about, something called a true mirror. It was invented by John and Catherine Walters in New York, a mirror constructed so that what you see is not a reflection twisted by angles, but what everyone else sees when they look at you. Imagine that for a moment. A mirror that reveals you, unflinching, unedited. When you stand before it, you don't seek reassurance. You don't ask, do I look tidy? Am I attractive? Am I enough? Instead, you search for truth. The truth of your presence, the truth of your being. And that's the point. The world doesn't need another copy of someone else. It needs you. Your gifts, your expression, your exact way of showing up. And here's where it gets profound. To show up fully, you must understand the structures within yourself that shape how you move through the world. Jung called these structures the persona, the mask you wear to meet expectations, and the shadow, the parts you deny, fear, or reject. The persona is the social role we adopt to gain acceptance, often shaped by childhood conditioning, societal rules, or cultural norms. While essential for functioning in the world, over-identification with it can obscure our authentic self, leaving us disconnected from our deeper needs and desires. Every act of compliance, every attempt to please, strengthens the mask and distances us from our totality. Conversely, the shadow houses everything we have repressed or denied: uncomfortable emotions, forgotten dreams, unacknowledged desires, and traits deemed unacceptable by external standards. These hidden elements do not disappear. Instead, they influence our behavior unconsciously, shaping our choices, reactions, and interpersonal dynamics. Neuroscience supports this. When unintegrated, the shadow manifests as impulsive reactions, stress responses in the amygdala, or behavioral patterns outside conscious awareness. Jung insisted that embracing and integrating the shadow is crucial because it is the source not only of vulnerability, but also of creativity, resilience, and authentic power. It contains the very traits and potentials society or our early experiences asked us to hide. Beyond the persona and shadow lies the self, the totality of the psyche, a harmonization of conscious awareness with unconscious potential. The self is the organizing center that reconciles opposites within us: light and dark, masculine and feminine, reason and intuition. It is accessed through the process of individuation, which Jung described as the journey of becoming whole. Individuation is not an abstract or mystical pursuit. It is a structured psychological development in which we consciously engage with our inner polarities, recognize recurring patterns, and integrate fragmented aspects of our being. Neuroscience confirms that such integration strengthens connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and limbic system, enhancing emotional regulation, reflective decision-making, and self-directed intentionality. Integral to this process are the anima and animus, the internalized feminine and masculine energies which guide our emotional depth, creativity, and relational harmony. Balancing these energies cultivates psychological flexibility, enabling us to respond to challenges without reverting to habitual reactive patterns. Similarly, the archetypes of the collective unconscious, universal inherited patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior shape how we perceive ourselves and the world. Identifying which archetypes dominate, which remain neglected, and integrating them consciously allows us to reclaim agency over our narrative, preventing unconscious patterns from dictating our life choices. Jungian psychology, paired with modern neuroscience and emotional intelligence, provides a roadmap. By understanding and integrating the persona, shadow, self, anima, animus, and archetypal influences, we rewire the brain for coherence between identity and action. Emotional intelligence equips us to sense and manage inner emotions, while critical thinking allows us to question internalized scripts and habitual responses. Together, they create a fertile environment for individuation, where our choices, behaviors, and expressions reflect our authentic essence rather than inherited or imposed narratives. In short, the journey toward authenticity is deeply Jungian. It asks us to confront the masks we wear, the shadows we hide, and the unconscious forces that shape us, while progressively bringing the totality of the self into conscious awareness. Every deliberate step toward integration strengthens neural pathways for intentional living, aligns heart and mind, and opens the possibility of acting from a place of wholeness. In doing so, we do not merely survive, we thrive, expressing a uniqueness that is profoundly our own, resonant with both psychological depth and scientific insight. Emotional intelligence and critical thinking are essential companions on this path toward authenticity. Emotional intelligence allows you to sense your own feelings and understand what drives your reactions, giving you the clarity to distinguish between what is truly yours and what is borrowed from expectations or fear. Critical thinking helps you examine assumptions, question inherited beliefs, and separate the story of your life from the scripts written by others. Together, they anchor you in authenticity. Emotional intelligence keeps you connected to your inner truth, while critical thinking ensures that the choices you make, the words you speak, and the life you live reflect that truth. Through both, you can navigate the world consciously, make intentional decisions, and step fully into the person you were always meant to be. And yet, many of us drift through life without touching this core, caught between what we think we should be and who we truly are. We spend energy performing, pleasing, measuring ourselves against others, or following the voices of expectation. These voices, inside our heads, in our social media feeds, in the constant noise of life, are relentless. And they ask us to be anyone but ourselves. So the first thing I invite you to do is turn off the noise. Not to escape life, but to notice the spaces between the pauses where your true self can be heard. Silence is not emptiness. It is fertile ground for insight, creativity, and clarity. The moment you quiet the noise, even just slightly, you can begin to hear yourself again. Next comes setting boundaries. Saying no is not rejection. It is an act of alignment. Every no is a yes to yourself, to your growth, and to the opportunities that actually matter. Your brain responds to this too. Neuroscience confirms that when we set boundaries, the amygdala, the center of emotional threat response, actually calms. And the prefrontal cortex engages, helping us make decisions from awareness rather than fear. And here's a tool I call Not My Story. Many of us live as if the circumstances of life, statistics, societal narratives, other people's limitations define us. But they don't have to. The story you inherit is not your story unless you choose to make it yours. You are the author. You decide the plot, the tone, the character arc. So here's a question I'd like to ask. Are you living a tragedy, or are you writing an adventure? Every moment gives you the opportunity to turn the page. But the deepest anchor is your core. Your core is the integration of your values, your evolving potential, and your authentic purpose. What principles am I unwilling to compromise, no matter the pressure? When do I feel fully alive, expansive, and aligned? Which patterns limit me, shrink me, or disconnect me from my true self? How am I integrating my shadow, my lessons, and my growth? And in what ways am I evolving, expanding, and deepening my authentic expression? Your core is not static. It is alive, evolving, and expansive. Neuroscience shows that when we act in alignment with our core values, dopamine pathways and reward circuits activate, giving a deep sense of satisfaction and motivation that is sustainable, unlike fleeting external approval. This is why grounding yourself in your core is not a luxury. It is essential for resilience, clarity, and authenticity. Living from your core also means embracing ambiguity. Life is rarely linear. The world places periods where there should be commas, places where judgment, closure, and expectation are prematurely inserted. Jung would call this the tension between conscious certainty and unconscious potential. Science tells us that the brain thrives on adaptive ambiguity. It is in these pauses that creativity, insight, and authentic self-expression emerge. And finally, to live fully, you must express, not impress. Every choice, your words, your actions, your posts online, your creative output is an opportunity to reflect your unique self. Are you acting from expectation or from essence? This question, repeated often in daily life, rewires the brain for intentionality, aligning behavior with identity and increasing emotional coherence. When we do not live authentically, we pay quiet costs. Not all consequences announce themselves loudly. Many settle in slowly, unnoticed, until they become familiar. Consider these reflections not as criticism, but as gentle inquiry. Do I feel mentally busy, yet emotionally disconnected? As if I'm constantly on, but rarely present? Am I successful on paper, yet strangely empty, restless, or unfulfilled inside? Do I say yes often, even when my body, energy, or intuition says no? Have I become skilled at performing competence, confidence, or happiness while suppressing what I truly feel? Do I feel unseen, even when surrounded by people, because what they see is not the real me? Am I living according to expectations I inherited, absorbed, or adapted to, rather than values I consciously chose? Do I experience chronic fatigue, irritation, anxiety, or emotional numbness without a clear external cause? Do I fear stillness or silence because it might reveal emotions or truths I've been avoiding? Have my relationships become draining rather than nourishing, built on roles instead of resonance? Am I postponing my life, waiting for permission, certainty, or the right time to be myself? Psychology reminds us that sustained inauthenticity creates internal fragmentation, where thoughts, emotions, and actions fall out of alignment. Neuroscience shows that this dissonance keeps the nervous system in a subtle but chronic state of stress, quietly depleting clarity, creativity, and vitality. Over time, the cost is not just emotional, it is existential. We may gain approval, stability, or predictability, but we slowly lose connection with our inner compass, our energy, and our sense of meaning. As you begin moving toward authenticity, it is not uncommon to notice discomfort, not only within yourself, but in others. Sometimes resistance comes not from strangers, but from family members, friends, or familiar environments that have known you in a particular role for a long time. This is not always ill-intentioned. Often it reflects fear, uncertainty, or attachment to who you were, rather than openness to who you are becoming. Yet this clarity matters. Love that requires you to remain small, silent, or unchanged is not love that supports your wholeness. True care, even when it feels unfamiliar or uncomfortable, makes room for your growth, your evolving values, and your authentic expression. When encouragement disappears the moment you begin aligning with yourself, it does not signal that you are doing something wrong. It reveals the limits of another person's capacity to walk beside transformation. This awareness is not an invitation to reject others. It is an invitation to stop abandoning yourself. Emotional maturity allows us to hold compassion for where others are without negotiating away our own truth. Authenticity does not ask for conflict. It asks for courage. And sometimes the most loving act is to keep walking your path gently, even when not everyone is ready to walk it with you. So I leave you with this, as if I'm speaking directly into the depths of your life. The world does not need another copy of anyone else. It needs you, whole, unmasked, in shadow and in light, in your quiet brilliance and in your boldness. It needs the unrepeatable expression of your curiosity, your courage, your capacity to grow and transform. The journey is neither simple nor comfortable, but it is sacred. Because when you live from your core, integrate your shadow, harmonize your inner energies, and act from the authenticity of yourself, you do not merely exist, you radiate. You illuminate the spaces you occupy. You deepen life itself. Every act of claiming your authentic self is not just symbolic. It rewires your brain, strengthens the emotional regulation, and activates your prefrontal cortex to act with clarity and purpose. When you step fully into yourself, you are literally bringing harmony between your conscious awareness and your unconscious potential, between your persona and shadow, your anima and animus. Neuroscience tells us that these moments of integration enhances creativity, resilience, and the ability to navigate life with intentionality. Jung would call this the journey towards the self, the realization of your totality, and every deliberate step, every conscious affirmation is a stride toward wholeness. And now, I invite you to step into this power here and now. Every word is a ripple, every intention a pulse of your authentic presence. Remember, the world cannot truly live until you do. And the first act of transformation begins with you claiming yourself fully and unconditionally. Pause for a moment and feel what has been quietly waiting for acknowledgement within you. Which of the quiet costs of living inauthentically spoke to you most? Where have you been holding back, dimming your presence, or silencing your truth? Share your thoughts below. Sometimes simply naming them is the first step toward reclaiming your energy, your clarity, and your alignment. Because this is a space to reflect, to witness, and to connect with others on the same journey, as together we move closer to living fully, courageously, and authentically.